The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi all, this is Dhaval Sahija from Cygnet Infotech. Thank you for joining the webinar. The subject of the webinar as stated is Migrating to SharePoint 2013, Best Practices and Solutions. As you all know, recently, few months back, Microsoft has launched new version of SharePoint, that is 2013. And we have been receiving a lot of inquiries and a lot of prospects have been asking about migration from 2007 and 2010 to 2013. So we would like to showcase this informative webinar providing information on migrating to SharePoint 2013, best practices and solution. The presenter of concern webinar is my colleague Jay Mehta, senior SharePoint consultant. So I will pass on the line to my colleague Mr. Jay Mehta.
Yeah, first of all, good afternoon, everybody. This is Jay Mehta. I'm working in Cygnet Infotech as a role as a senior SharePoint consultant and Microsoft certified trainer. First of all, I would like to know about to tell you about the main reason about this webinar. As already Dhaval has told you and make you aware about that we are having lots of inquiries from our customers regarding to the SharePoint migration, particularly from SharePoint 2010 to 2013, as well as from MOS 2007 to SharePoint 2013. So we have evaluated certain requirements of them, and in fact, for one of our customer, we did the migration from SharePoint 2010 to SharePoint 2013. In the previous case, the customer we have since from the last 5 years. So we did the migration for them from MOS 2007 to MOS SharePoint 2010, and right now, in the couple of weeks ago, we made a migration from SharePoint 2010 to SharePoint 2013. So this is our webinar agenda. So first of all, we'll start with the introduction to SharePoint 2013, the migration. Then after, we'll consider the understanding of the migration in terms of its processes and the checklists. Then we'll talk about the consideration for migration and understanding the downtime and the disruption. Then after, we'll target the main terms of the migration, that is the content database, service application, databases, site collections, and customizations, and the important one, that is the SharePoint 2013 user experience. And the last, will finalize our migration through validating our migration. And of course, we'll open the question and answer session for you, so you can ask any questions regarding to your migration queries. So I'm going to start with the very first point, that is introduction to SharePoint 2013 migration. Now the first question comes here, that is, what are the reasons to migrate to SharePoint 2010 to 2013? Or you can consider any previous version of SharePoint. Of course, the first point, that is, you should not go for the only minor changes. Your expectation for the new SharePoint 2013 would be high. But under what circumstances that you are going to find out this, that SharePoint 2013 is more reliable and more efficient? So first of all, in terms of ROI. So this is what we have identified in our recent case study with our migration from 2010 to 2013 was the ROI. So basically our customer was looking to increase their infrastructure in terms of SharePoint servers and the licensing CALs. But later stage they have a big wish list of their requirements. So in that case they have asked us, consult us for the same, and then after we have evaluated that for particular wish list they have to go with the certain amount of customization. So it impacts their IT budget. So at the same time the SharePoint 13 was in the market. Obviously it was the beta and the preview version of it, but now the SharePoint 2013 is available in the market. So we research on the ROI part for them, and based on that we have found some very interesting facts and calculations, and then we decided that rather to go with the customization in their existing environment of SharePoint 2010, we should have to move for the SharePoint 2013. The features that the main important for their SharePoint 2013, that is the social enterprise. Now SharePoint 2013 social enterprise feature allows you almost more than 90 social interacting features where you can connect with LinkedIn, Facebook, Yammer. The Yammer is the most recent one where Microsoft has just taken over of it, and it promotes the more professional networking within your system and the SharePoint environment. The strong and effective enterprise search in the SharePoint 2013, that is, it is the integration of fast search and the Bing capabilities. So in the previous version of SharePoint 2010 you need to purchase the server cal for the fast search. Now here you do not need to do that. Similarly, you need to integrate your search with Bing. So in that case you have to use the federated search, but now those all Bing capabilities are integrated within the enterprise search. The very effective web content management, the sharing. Now the sharing is a new part in the SharePoint 2013 that is going to be like you can put your documents and share it through the SkyDrive. Now it is a particular specific requirement from the C-level of persons for our customers. Like they have certain documents that which cannot be shared within the organization, but they would like to share internally. So by sharing on the SkyDrive, it's most privacy full part of this SharePoint 2013. In terms of storage infrastructure improvements, so of course SharePoint 2013 supports with the SQL Server 2012, where SQL Server 2012 gives you the more scalable and efficient and very performing outcome. So obviously your storage infrastructure definitely going to be improved. So of course you have to consume less storage space in that case, and you can achieve lot more. It improves the end user productivity, of course, but we have to take care of their training part, because the certain amount of UI is going to be changed. So in that case, what the end user has to get trained for the new UI. So that was the consideration for us. So it was obviously again impacting the ROI case. Again, a new beautiful feature of the SharePoint 2013, that is the apps and the marketplace. It gives you the leverage to use the other applications in your environment and make your SharePoint customization very easily by hiring any developer company or other freelancers. You can also host your applications from your end, and you can earn the business. So that means it helps you to use the existing components from the market, and you can also do the business by selling your components through the marketplace. The improved BI available for the decision makers, automation of governance, and the very interesting point that is from SharePoint 2013 you can easily move to the Office 365, where this was the quite tedious process for SharePoint to Office 365. So basically these are the reasons we have identified in our customers migration case, and then we have taken care of them, and then we move ahead in that case. Now once we started to analyze our customers' requirement, we have identified this migration cycle. Obviously these contents are available on the Microsoft site, so that site has been very helpful to us to gather certain amount of information, and we analyze them and analyze their requirements and the information, and we bring out the best solution for them. So basically in the cycle we have a very straightforward plan. Was the first phase was the planning of the migration, then the preparation for the migration, particularly with the farms and all for the SharePoint 2013. Then we have to test it. So we have to test our farm with the same capability and the performance which we were having in the SharePoint 2010. Then after we went for the implement, and then finally we validate our migration. Now here if you see the plan and the prepare, that is going to be sequential, but the test, implement, and the validate is going to be iterative in all the case. So as per particularly my personal experience with the SharePoint migration, that is the test, implement, and the validate, that is the iterative manner process where you test it, implement it, validate it. If you find any issues with your migration, again test it, again re-implement it, and again validate them. So of course at least you performing 2 to 3 cycles for your migration, so it gives you more confidence about your migration. I would recommend here that you should do this activity on your staging server, but of course you have to consider your hardware and software infrastructure in that case. Going much into the deeper, particularly with the plan. So in terms of server prerequisites, but I would like to first tell you about the hardware and software. So here I'm not going to discuss anything about the hardware and the software requirements for the SharePoint 13 because they are already available on the TechNet, and they have been detailed described over there. Now if I were to talk about the server prerequisite, now this is a special prerequisite while you are migrating from SharePoint 2010 to SharePoint 2013. So that is the first one, that is remove your previous version of SharePoint. So that means your existing SharePoint environment is not going to work with your SharePoint 2013. The reason is why, so I'm going to explain you later on. Now of course, as you are not going to use the existing version of SharePoint, so you would like to use your existing hardware. So in that case you have to take a backup your farm using SharePoint backup tool. Means you can use the central admin, and through that you can take a backup. You can also use the SQL Server Management Studio where you can take the backup of your all databases. And last, through your farm administrators, they can execute certain PowerShell commands and they can get the backup. Then after you have to uninstall the old SharePoint version, whatever it is, as well as you have to uninstall the other SharePoint dependent products as well, particularly the language packs if you have installed any, and the project server. So this is what about the server prerequisite. You do not need older version of SharePoint. That's the bottom line for this server prerequisite. Now moving for the client expectation, means these are the certain things that client has to implement or client has to have there in their configuration of their system. If they want to fully leverage the offline and integrated experience with the SharePoint, so in that case they must need Office 2010 or Office 2013. If we talk about the SharePoint designer, particularly those who are working on the branding and working with the business connectivity models while designing the external content type and external lists, even they are using the workflows. So for that, SharePoint Designer 2010 is working with the SharePoint 2013. But here is the only one constraint, and the constraint is it supports only 14 mode of site. Now I am going to make one point, that is in the SharePoint 2013 it supports both the version of SharePoint, means it supports SharePoint 2010 and it supports SharePoint 2013 as well. So that means if you are trying to connect any particular web application or site collection from SharePoint Designer 2010, it will only connect it with your 14 mode site. SharePoint Designer 15 is also available in the market, and through that you can connect to both the versions of SharePoint, that is 14 and 15. You need a web browser which should be higher than Internet Explorer 8 or higher. The Firefox, Chrome and Apple Safari is also there with their latest version. But the one constraint is still there with the Microsoft, that is to use certain functionalities from the UI from the SharePoint 2013, you need ActiveX objects. So you must need to install the ActiveX objects to take a full advantage of SharePoint 2013 functionalities. Now coming to the next part, that is understanding migration, particularly in terms of process and the checklist. Now whenever we think about the migration, so there are certain methods available in our listing. And now if you are aware with the migration from MOS 2007 to SharePoint 2010, there were two methods: in-place upgrade and database attach. Now here I am going to discuss both the methods, but in their different sense. The major point, that is the in-place upgrade, is now not supported in SharePoint migration from SharePoint 2010 to SharePoint 2013. I will explain it later on. First of all, we'll discuss on the database attach approach. So first, when the database attach approach is quite simple. You just need to take a backup and restore it on your targeted farm, and then after you have to attach your database to your concerned web application, service application, etc. So here we have a listing of supported databases for database attach method. The content databases for your site web application and site collections, the project databases of SharePoint 2010, search admin database, profile database, social database, managed metadata databases, secure stored database, and the access database. Now here few concerns are there related with certain database which are supporting the database attach method. The first is their project databases. The project databases means, like in the earlier version of SharePoint 2010, there were 4 databases. Now while you will perform this database attach method for the project databases, it will merge it to the single. So that is the point to be noted here for those users who are willing to migrate from SharePoint 2010 to SharePoint 13 with respect to project server and EPM capabilities. Another point to be noted, that is for the access database. Now access database is only supported for the B2B version. Now what do you mean by the B2B and B2B? Because here are the two main terms which are quite confusing for the users while we are going to understand the in-place upgrade, why and why it is not supported in SharePoint 2013. Now here are the list of unsupported databases for the database attach method. The configuration database, of course it is not supported even for the B2B and the B2B. Sync database, particularly used for the SharePoint user profile service synchronization, and the search index databases. Now the point is that the B2B and the B2B. Now here it comes for the in-place farm upgrade. Now as I have already explained that SharePoint 13 supports both the versions, SharePoint 2010 and SharePoint 2013 itself. So in that case, you do not need SharePoint 2010 to be exist in your environment. So that's why you have to remove it. So of course the in-place farm upgrade is not possible. Now the terms V2V and B2B are like explained in such a way, this way, that is the V2V stands for version to version. So that means you are moving from one SharePoint environment to the completely new SharePoint environment, like the major version transition. We can say like SharePoint 2010 to SharePoint 2013. And if we have to talk about the SharePoint 2000 Service Pack 1 and other cumulatives, so those are considered as a B2B, like build to build upgrades. So these are the reasons for the upgrade, means the in-place upgrade is not possible, particularly while you are using the V2V upgradation. But B2B is also available. So that means if the later stage Microsoft is going to release the another version, means in terms of the build, let's say Service Pack 1 or any cumulative pack, so it will consider as your in-place farm upgrade. So Microsoft will tell that, means yes, in-place upgrade is possible, but the condition is already, of course, will be applied. That is not going to be the V2V, it is going to be B2B. That's build to build. Now next, in terms of coming up to the preparing the checklist. So first of all, you have to look after your content databases. The content database, basically you have to maintain their names, and important point, that is you have to understand and notice your all the changes for the content databases. Means whatever the current issues with your content database, please note it down them. So later stage you can fix them prior to the migration, or later on you can be fix them while you will upgrade them from SharePoint 2010 to SharePoint 2013. This was only in terms of schema. Next is about the service application. So note down all the service applications and the services which you are consuming in your current environment. Then you have to consider your farm or web application related settings, like your authentication providers, info path forms which are being deployed by the administrator, and the many more things like special configuration you did for your farms. Next, after, you have to consider and list down all your customizations which you have deployed to your SharePoint farm. Now this checklist is applicable not only for the single server, it applicable for multiple server farm environments as well. And then after, very most important one, that is the plan your upgrade performance. Means ultimately what you are expecting, what level of performance that you are expecting from your migrated, or say newly migrated SharePoint 2013 once you migrated from your older version of SharePoint. So these are the kind of a checklist that you have to prepare prior to your migration process. Now the next point is about the considerations for migration and understanding the downtime and disruption. Now this is again a pre-part before we start the migration. Means these are the certain things that you have to keep in mind while you are going to start the migration process. The very first is you have to identify those stuffs which are not going to be migrated. Like I have a couple of examples here. The first one is the PowerPoint broadcast site collection. Now whenever the SharePoint 2010 was released, so this was the new feature available in the version of SharePoint 2010. But now this feature is not available in the SharePoint 2013. So for that you have to use link. Another interested component is now not going to be supported, that is the content editor web part. So it's basically a very good feature, or say very good component is not going to be supported anymore, but the replacement is there, that is going to be the script editor web part. with very intuitive and very flexible in terms of customization to represent your data on the SharePoint. Another important part, that is the understand the downtime and the disruption. Now here I'm going to explain the disruption first, because whenever disruption comes, it relates with the downtime. Disruption means kind of a disturbance to your migration process. Sometimes it happens particularly with your customizations, like your certain customizations are not capable or not supportive to your updated versions of any SharePoint 2013. So in that case, you would stuck to migrate your environment, and it will cause the downtime. And of course, the downtimes for the enterprise, it's not tolerable for many more number of hours. So what you can do, you have to prepare the plan for the risk, and you have to manage its mitigation. So the mitigation part would be here very simple. If you find out those customization which can disrupt your migration process, so in that case, first of all, you have to look at the complexity of the customization, then prepare the another set of customization which should support and capable to support the new version of SharePoint, and then after you have to start the migration. So in that case, you can avoid certain amount of downtime. Now if we talk about the downtime, so there is zero downtime. Means if you talk about the reality, there is no downtime. It's not possible at all. There is always downtime, but it should be manageable. So you have to mitigate that downtime accordingly, and based on that you can reduce the downtime for your customers. In our case, we have decided and controlled our downtime by managing certain options. The certain options we have, like we made our databases to the read-only, but in that case it consumes more hardware infrastructure of your environment on your network. So that is again going to be the concern and constraint for the other organizations, those who have not enough infrastructure within their hand. And the another one, that is you start with the parallel process. Means side by side you can create two farms, one for the 13 and one for the 10, and then gradually you move from 10 to 13. Again, it's a cost effect. It's not going to be the cost effective because you need additional hardware and everything in your hand to do migration from one end to another end. Next is in terms of your performance. So you have to again consider the performance, like you have to expect the performance. You have to decide the performance criteria in terms of your databases and the site collections. Because if you talk about the site collections, so basically site collection holds all the data of the SharePoint in terms of your sites, subsites, list, documents, etc. Even the features as well. And if you consider the performance of the SQL Server, so it basically carried out into the hardware terms like your CPU, memory. So all this stuff that you have to consider while you are going to migrate. Next is the farm topology. Now if we talk about the farm topology, so here you have to prepare your identical farm topology which you have in your older or existing environment. Means if you are having a multiple server farm, so you have to define your multiple server farm. You can also change it later on, means in terms of you can perform the service based delegation to your farm. Means sometimes it happens you have a certain amount of web front ends and you have 2 or 3 service application servers where you are managing the search, BCS and user profile, etc. Now very important point that we have found during our migration process for our customer, that is the Office web app components. Now in SharePoint 2010, the Office web app components been installed on the same server where the SharePoint is installed. Now here in SharePoint 2013, this concept is different. Now you have to install the Office web app components separately from the SharePoint 2013 environment. So of course it causes your one more hardware. You need additional server. Through that you have to install the Office Web App components, and from that you can achieve the Office Web App integration with your SharePoint 2013. Another major consideration for the migration, that is going to be your URL changes after the migration. Of course it's a big pain. Means we have so many migrations stuff we did in the past. So over where we have found this challenge of our customers that they have changed their server name, and after that they were facing lots of issue of broken links. So it is recommended that you should not change your links while you are performing the migration. Even you can also take care, and as a best part of a practice, you do not need to change the URL in your testing environment as well. So based on that you can gain the more confidence about the migration, because ultimately the URLs are majority used by the end users. Prepare your governance plan. As we are now aware with that, SharePoint 2013 is supporting the both mode of SharePoint 10 and SharePoint 13, means I can say SP14 and SP15 in that case. So you have to prepare the proper governance plan for the site collection administrators, that you should allow only 14 mode or 15 mode or both the modes of site creation. It is better you should prepare the proper notification plan for your consent stakeholders, particularly your end users and the C-level category users, where whenever you are starting the migration when the migration completes. You have to also prepare the backup plan as well, means if migration goes failed, so in that case you can come back with your older system, so your work and the processes should not be disturbed in the routine life. Then after, you have to consider your customization, means listing down all the customization and verifies them, means whether they are going to support in the new environment or not. If they are not going to be supported in the new environment, so you have to find out the alternative or alternative solutions. Now your customizations can be code and codeless. If we talk about the codeless, so in that case you can consider the content editor web parts, even though you can consider the info path forms. So all those forms and everything you should have to carry it out, and you have to look after them while you are going to migrate them from one existing SharePoint to the SharePoint 2013. And the last one that is important in terms of cleaning up your environment, means of course it's a dirty job, nobody would like to do that, but yes, it is important. If you are not going to clear your mess from your existing environment, then you cannot enjoy your new upgraded environment of SharePoint 2013. Yeah, I'm having some questions from other user, Mr. Srinivas Bula. Mr. Srinivas, we are going to start the questions and answer session once we complete these, and we'll address your concerned questions as well. Okay, now coming to the main part, that is migration of content database, service application databases, and site collections. So I would like to familiar with the certain PowerShell commands. Basically these are the commands which we have used in our migration process. In terms of farm, you can use the sp up farm for as your object. So the commandlets would be upgrade sp farm. For the migration of content database, the three commands, I think if you have familiar with the migration from MOS 2007 to SharePoint 2010, so these commands been highly used: mount sp content database, test sp content database, and upgrade sp content database. And certain commands for the site and for the services. Now here I have only mentioned the commandlets for the services. Those are starting with a new. Let's take it for the example, new SP profile service application. But there are other commands are available with the to perform the migration. That is going to be the upgrade and the restore. So it would be like upgrade SP profile service application and restores SP profile service application. Now one more important point, that is STS ADM. Means sometimes we are looking, means as a part of a very initial migration that we are testing with the means we are checking our content database health. So here we have a certain tools are available within the SharePoint which allows us to view our current SharePoint site content database by looking at and executing certain commands. To review your objects stability of the current environment of the SharePoint 2010, you can execute the command test SP content database. So it will list down all the object status and their capability to migrate from to new environment and all. But there is another point is I would like to comment here, that is, and we have noticed that STS ADM that and the pre-upgrade check basically we used in migration from 2007 to 2010. So now it is not available. So that means STS ADM is now deprecated. So you are fully dependent on the PowerShell commands. Now once I've been starting with the migration, so first of all I need the web applications for the upgrade. So what are the web applications you have in your SharePoint 2010 farm, you have to prepare and create the same web applications in SharePoint 2013 farm. So your environment has to be identical with your older environment. After that, you can start with the migration of the content databases by executing two commands, test SP content database and then after mount SP content database. Once you start and execute the mount SP content database, it will migrate your content database from existing and SharePoint 2010 to SharePoint 2013. But make a note here, until you perform the deferred site collection upgrade approach, till time your schema for the content database won't be changed. So this is a major point that you have to notice, because by just doing the mount SP content database, your migration is not going to be complete. There is one more point has to come, and then after you will completely move from SharePoint 2010 to SharePoint 2013. Now, as I have mentioned that there is another upgrade is coming in the line, that is the deferred site collection upgrade. Now, I have certain facts about the deferred site collection upgrade. First one, it's a faster upgrade approach. Ultimately, it's a replacement of visual upgrade feature which was available in SharePoint 2010. Now, the difference between the visual upgrade and the deferred site collection upgrade, that is, basically visual upgrade preserves the old master page, CSS and the HTML files of older version of SharePoint, where the deferred site collection upgrade preserves the so many things, means it's considering all the master pages, CSS and HTML file, as well as it keeps the features along with it. This upgrade basically allows you to use your previous version of SharePoint UI seamlessly. So that means if you have been migrated from SharePoint 2010 to SharePoint 2013, but still you can use all the functionalities of SharePoint 2010 very easily until you decide to change your UI to SharePoint 2013. The major difference between them in terms of objects, like whenever you perform the migration from 2010 to 2013, your site collection, means SP site UI, will be upgraded granularly instead of SP web. So that means visual upgrade was done on the site objects, means SP web, and the site collection changes going to be done by the deferred site collection upgrade. But the very important point that is once your site collection is upgraded, then it cannot be rolled back. So that means once you have moved from 14 UI to 15 UI, so then after you cannot come back to the 14th look and feel. So that's why it's very important and very careful and cautious point here that before you move your site from 14 to 15, make sure all your customizations and everything should support it at the time. Now, how exactly this deferred site collection upgrade works? Basically, it creates the snapshot of your database, of your content database. Now, if supported, means if your content database is supported with the snapshot creation functionality of SQL Server, then it will create the snapshot and it will give you the preview of your complete SharePoint 2010 site into the SharePoint 2013. If the snapshot functionality is not enabled, then in that case SharePoint will automatically create one database by taking the backup and restoration of your content database. This will be done by the timer job. So when the timer job invokes, it takes the backup and restore it as a separate copy. But while it is taking the backup, it make your content database in read-only mode, and it also gives you the appropriate status notifications as well. So let's say, means in that case, if you have migrated but you have not changed your UI for 15, so still you can preview your 15 UI by still working in the SharePoint 14 mode. Now here is the execution path for the SharePoint pages. Now as the SharePoint 2013 supports both the versions of 14 mode and 15 mode. So you may have a kind of a pages which are created for the certain pages are created for 14 mode and the 15 mode. Now what will happen if the page is requested for the 14 mode? So basically that request will particularly come to the assembly redirect policy, and assembly redirect policy will check and send the code to the SharePoint 15 assembly. Now SharePoint 15 assembly will recognize that this assembly has been redirected from the 14 mode, so it will start executing the code and it will check that this code is particularly written for the SharePoint 2010. So appropriate object model will be loaded into the memory, and then after it will start processing your page, and then at the end your request will be solved. If you notice here, if your page is requested for the 14 mode, then only layouts will be shown, and if your 15 mode site is been or any page requested, so layout/15, the subdirectory will be shown here. Similarly, you have a similar structure for the templates and layouts and the control templates as well. So rest of everything will remain as it is, just in terms of their separation. For as we have a two different hive, we can say like 14 hive and the 15 hive in terms of their directory structure. The important point that is all the sites and webs would be the part of your SP15 content database. It would not be your SP14 content database. So that is the point that you have to always consider here. Now next functionality of and the operation mode of SharePoint 2013, that is feature fallback behavior. Now let's say if you are looking for any feature which is, and your site is in the SharePoint 13 mode, so in that case it can access both the types of features. Means you can have the features of SharePoint 2013 and you can also access the features of SharePoint 2010 as well. But if your site is working in the 14 mode, means in the SharePoint 2010 mode, so in that case you will have only SharePoint 2010 features. But one more loss can be there, that is if the features are deprecated, then those features are not going to be supported. So that means what will happen if your existing SharePoint 2010 environment will be migrated from SharePoint 2013, but still you are running in the 14 mode and those features are deprecated. So in that case those features are not available with you anymore. So that is the part again you have to consider before you start migration. Now coming to the next point, that is the customization and the UI of SharePoint 2013. So of course you have to also migrate your code as well. The code in terms of UI, information structure, backend service applications, and third-party customizations. If we talk about the UI, so it basically related with the master page, page layouts, web parts. If you talk about the information structure, then your list, libraries, content types, site columns. Backend service applications means the services which you are consuming in your web application or any custom service applications which you have developed for your certain requirements. And of course the third-party customizations means basically we are doing the third-party customization through the vendor. So before you start the migration, first you should ask to your vendor whether these functionalities and these customizations are going to be matched and supported to the new environment or not. If you found that they are not compatible with the new environment, then in that case you have to find the alternative solution, or you can ask your vendor to develop a new similar type of feature for the new environment. In terms of user experience, you have a two mode 14 and mode 15. The only advantage if you move to the 15, that is you can still have all the features of 14. Of course the deprecated features are not going to be there. Then after, prepare your identical environment, means you have to copy your customizations from SharePoint 2010 farm to SharePoint 2013. Those are basically in terms of site definitions, style sheets, web parts, web services, features and solutions, your assemblies, web.config changes, info path forms, and etc. Then after, we are coming to the validation of your migration. Now this is quite crucial. You have to understood the behavior of your migration, means after doing certain migration, what is the impact on your performance and your expectation from the migration. The review logs. Once you perform the upgrade, so upgrade logs are being created by the Microsoft. Along with that, the application event logs are going to be available with you. So you have, after doing the migration cycle, you have to keep reviewing your logs, upgrade logs and the application event logs. So based on that, you can come to identify that about your current issues, and then after you can plan them or you can work on them to fix those issues for the next migration cycle. While you are validating your migrated environment, these are the things that you have to keep in mind. You have to review and validate your web applications, particularly in terms of their web application related settings. Review and validate your services, basically the SharePoint service applications. You have to also look for the external data sources like InfoPath, BCS connections, means the BCS are majorly used in the SharePoint while you are looking to you have managed your certain connections from your external system. Excel service connections, external target for this enterprise search. You have to also point and validate your migration for the authentication provider. Now here I would like to comment on one point, that is in SharePoint 2010 what we have seen, that is the when you create the web application, so basically it creates under the classic authentication mode. But now in SharePoint 2013 the web application creation mode is now quite changed. Now it supports the claims authentication only, and basically it's used the Windows claims inside it. So it is very important that while you are moving your web application migration from 2010 to 2013, you have to look for the authentication providers as well. And last, you have to maintain the defect sheet of your customization and apply appropriate fixes to them to validate your final environment. Now the next point, that is about the migration from SharePoint 2007 to SharePoint 2013. So it's a big question, and the answer is yes, it is possible. But of course you do not need to stop at the 2010. But again the fact is that there is no direct migration from MOS 2007 to SharePoint 2013. The point is here, like, where you will save. You will save the cost for SharePoint 2010 licensing. So that means if you are looking to move from SharePoint 2007 to SharePoint 2013, so in that case you do not need to purchase the SharePoint 2010 CALs and server licenses. You can straight away purchase the SharePoint 2013. You have to migrate from MOS 2007 to MOS 2000 SharePoint 2013, but it would be only in the 14 mode, not into the 15 mode. And after doing that, you have to gradually move from 14 to the 15. So over here you are saving your hardware as well as you are going to save your licensing cost, software infrastructure cost as well. So these are basically the major concerns to our existing customers, those who are having the MOS 2007 and they are willing to move to the SharePoint 2013. So it gives you the very, very good advantage. Means you are not late and you do not need to purchase any, or you do not need to waste your money on SharePoint 2010. In fact, we have a couple of inquiries here and we are also going to treat them by this similar approach. Okay, so I'm going to open the questions and answer session for the 10 minutes. So your questions are very welcome here. You can start questionings. Yeah, I have a question from Mr. Srinivas Bola. Thank you for a question, Mr. Srinivas. Your question is, can we migrate from SharePoint 2007 to SharePoint 2010 without installing 2010 in the environment? Yes, of course. You do not need to install SharePoint 2010. In fact, when you will install the SharePoint 2013, you will have the SharePoint 2010 in your hand as a SP mode 15, mode 14 and mode 15. So you can straight away migrate from MOS 2007 to to SharePoint 2013 only in the 14 mode, and then after you have to move from 14 to 15. Okay, I have one more question from Mr. Shahid Ahmad. Thank you, Mr. Shahid, for question. That is you have asked the question that is, can you tell me the release date of the full version of SharePoint 2013? Oh, in fact, it has been released, but on the Microsoft site, it is not available yet. But as we are the partner, so we have the access to use the full version of SharePoint 2013. So maybe Microsoft is going to launch and enable the full version RTM link on their site very soon. Okay, I have one more question from Rashmi Gujar. Thank you, Rashmi, for the question. And your question is, can I use SharePoint 2010 hardware environment for SharePoint 2013? Yes, of course, but it has to be quite capable, and it should meet the hardware requirements for SharePoint 2013. And while you are going to install the SharePoint 2013, first you have to remove the SharePoint 2010, as I have already mentioned in the earlier stage of the webinar. I have another question from Chun Long 10. Thank you, Chun. The question is, does SharePoint 2013 support external blob storage? Particularly, to be honest, I'm not aware with that functionality, but I will get back to you for your question.
रिमूव चाहिए मैंने डाउट है रिमूव ना एक्चुअली ये साइड लेवल है साइड लेवल છે અને સાઇટ કલેક્શન લેવલ એ માનીને જે એસઈઓ ફ્રેન્ડલી પણ રિપોર્ટ્સ આપે.
Okay, another question from Mr. Chun Long 10. The question is, why has web analytics been removed in SharePoint 2013? Mr. Chun, actually it is not removed. Actually, this functionality is enabled at the site collection level, from where you can get the various reports about your site collection accesses, and it's again in terms of improvement, it generates the SEO friendly reports as well. So I think that would address your question.
ધીમે ધીમે બધા ઘટી જશે. બોલતો કરી દે.
I have a question from Mr. David, whether we have capabilities in SharePoint 2013 implementation and custom development. Yes, we do have capabilities in SharePoint 2013 implementation and development. We do have capabilities in some implementation and development apart from migration.
Okay, I have one more question from Mr. David. That is, particularly you are looking for the SharePoint 2013 implementation and development. Yes, of course we are working on implementation of SharePoint 2013 and development.
કદાચ અમે આખું સ્ટેટસ આવે ઓફ કરું.
I will give my right to
એ તો હું પછી થેન્ક્સ કરતો. થેન્ક્સની સ્લાઇડ આવશે.
Okay, thank you everybody for your questions. If you have still any doubt, you can just drop an email to us at inquiry@cygnet-infotech.com. All the migration query will be responded and you will have the free consultation on them. And finally, so we are moving to the closing end of this webinar. So I would like to transfer the mic to the Dawal for the thanking note. Thank you everybody. Thank you for sharing your time.
Hi all, this is Dhawal. Thanks for attending the webinar and spending your time. It was great chatting with you all, and thanks for your questions and answers. We would be definitely coming up with more series of migration, and that would provide a more detailed and more precise information on migration to 2013, and we would be providing you information by email on same. And we would be also sharing you the presentation that we have showcased in the existing webinar. We would be sending you an email and with the details of the today's webinar and also response to all the questions and answers. Thank you.